going to talk about the topic of differentiated instruction. What is differentiated instruction? Let's start in the beginning. Here in America, we have mass education. We aim to educate the masses. We aim to educate the average student. Students come to school with different readiness. Some students go to preschool or pre-K before kindergarten, while some students, kindergarten is their first introduction to school. In a differentiated classroom, teachers strive to support students who can learn in different ways at different rates. What is a differentiated classroom? There are two givens in school: standards we need students to meet and students with different learning styles. In a differentiated classroom, teachers accept that students need different ways to get to these standards. There are three types of differentiated instruction: student interests, learning profiles, and readiness. To be a successful teacher in a differentiated classroom, teachers need to know their students' strengths and weaknesses. There are three pillars to differentiated instruction: philosophy, principles, and practices. Philosophy respects that students are diverse. We see students' potential. We remove barriers that may deny equal access to success for all students. Principles deal with creating a healthy learning environment using assessment results to alter our teaching, being flexible in the classroom. Practices deal with planning ahead, basing our instructional approaches on the needs of students, and using flexible grouping. Nature of differentiated classrooms. First, we need to create a healthy learning environment. Teachers believe in their students. The classroom is a place where students can succeed, but also a safe place for students to fail. Teachers understand and recognize different learning styles. Teachers are organized. Teachers focus on the main important information and skills students need to know to meet the standards. Teachers use different types of assessments. Assessments focus on showing what students have learned, not on what they have not. There are three types of differentiation: readiness, learning profiles, and student interest. Readiness. Students' readiness refers to how students come to school, not their ability. Students' readiness is always changing. In the video, Differentiated Instructions, Creating Multiple Paths of Learning, there is an example of a teacher grouping students by readiness. A math teacher is teaching students about fractions. Students are in various small groups. Students who have already mastered fractions were working together on a more advanced worksheet. Students who are still struggling with the concept of fractions are working on building a better foundation of understanding fractions. By grouping students this way, they are all being challenged. Learning profiles. Learning profiles deal with how students learn best. In the video previously mentioned, we see a great example of a teacher grouping students by learning profiles. An elementary school teacher was teaching students about the Oregon Trail. She grouped students by learning profile. Students who are auditory learners listened to music and stories about the Oregon Trail. Hands-on learners worked together to create a realistic outline of a wagon, and visual learners looked at photographs to interpret what they saw in the photos. Student interest. Student interest takes into account what students are interested in learning about. In the video previously mentioned, a teacher allows students to fill out a worksheet that identifies what they are interested in learning about. Once they identified what they were interested in, they were put in groups accordingly. Some students learned about historic figures in the unit, some learned about geographic locations, and others learned about the environment. So how can you differentiate? You can differentiate via the content. Content means the information we want students to learn. The content we want students to learn is all the same, but the way they receive the content can differ. Some students can read content, listen to content, watch content, research the content, and many other ways. You can also differentiate via the process. Process is how students learn the content. Students can work in groups or individually. They could learn at a slower pace or a faster pace, or students may need differentiated scaffolding. You can also differentiate via the products. Products are what students do to show or make to show how they have learned the content over the course of the unit. An example of products are students picking questions to answer on a test, various types of tests, different timelines for for products or different versions of projects. You can differentiate via the affect/learning environment. Affect/learning environment involves students' background, emotions, and classroom learning environment. Examples of affect/learning environment are giving some students more attention and reassurance, allowing students to take a break, allowing certain students to do an activity that requires more movement. Universal design of learning. What is UDL? UDL is a set of principles to follow when developing a curriculum so that the needs of every student within the classroom is met. UDL's goal is to meet the need of every child. There are 3 principles of UDL: multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression. Engagement is different ways students participate in the lesson. Representation is different ways students can learn the lesson. Expression is different ways students can show what they have learned. How to plan for UDL. Create a common goal. Outline the ways of representation, engagement, and expression. Make sure to plan for students with IEPs. Make the lesson accessible to all. On the picture shown on the side, it shows how I summarized the 3 principles of UDL during a social studies lesson. These summaries make sure you are using UDL while also attending to students with IEPs. Behavioral and social skills. School-wide positive behavioral support plan. School-wide positive behavioral support plans are plans to support positive behaviors. They are to help prevent bad behavior by celebrating good behavior. There are 3 tiers. The first tier are students are exposed to the same curriculum to prevent any problem behavior. The second tier is a supplemental social behavioral support is added to reduce some of the problem behavior. And the third tier is an individualized behavioral support plan created to help reduce the intensity and complications in problem behavior. Response to intervention. RTI is a general problem-solving intervention. RTI can be used for academic or behavioral problems. It's most commonly used when a student is believed to need special education. There are 6 characteristics of RTI. There's universal screening. All students' performance and progress is monitored. There's data-based decision-making and problem-solving. Data is used to make decisions regarding all aspects of the classroom. Continuous progress monitoring. Students are frequently assessed to see progress. Students' performance. Students' performance should shape instructional curriculum. Continuum of evidence-based interventions. Students all receive core curriculum that can be modified or specialized. And implementation fidelity. Interventions are continuously implemented. And then functional behavioral assessments. The goal of an FBA is to identify and address problem behavior. There is a cycle to identify behavior. First, we identify the problems, then we create a hypothesis about the antecedent and consequence of the behavior problem. Then we test the hypothesis, and finally we design an intervention plan to address the antecedent and consequences so that the problem behavior changes. There are some deficits for why problem behaviors may arise. Skills deficits, students lack the skills to perform and therefore problem behavior arises, or a performance deficit, students lack the ability to have appropriate interactions, so problem behavior arises. Overall, differentiated instruction is preparing for the reality within the classroom. All students are different, therefore all students have different ways of learning. Differentiated instruction anticipates and prepares for this reality. When we plan to teach the masses, then we plan to teach a mass of differences. Finally, we have our resources. These are the resources that I used to form this presentation today. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about differentiated instructions, and I look forward to hearing any feedback.